My name is Edwina, and I am 59 years old. 4 hours ago, I signed the papers for my dream house, a country home I had been saving for over 30 years. I stood in the empty living room, breathing in the smell of old wood and possibility. Then my phone rang. It was my daughter Priscilla. She told me that in 1 hour she would arrive with 20 people from her husband's family. They expected me to cook dinner and prepare rooms for a 2 week stay. I had dreamed of this house for 30 years. My daughter dreamed of turning it into a free hotel in 30 seconds. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If stories about standing up for yourself and protecting your dreams resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. What I did next surprised even myself, and I want you to hear every single detail of how this unfolded. Trust me, you will not want to miss how this story ends. Let me take you back to where this dream began, because to understand why that phone call hurt so deeply, you need to know what this house meant to me. I grew up in a cramped apartment in Buffalo, New York. There were 5 of us kids sharing 2 bedrooms, and my parents worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. We never had much, but every summer my father would scrape together enough money to rent a tiny cabin in the Finger Lakes region for 1 week, just 7 days. That was the only vacation we could afford, and it became the highlight of my entire year. I remember waking up to the sound of birds instead of traffic. I remember running barefoot through grass instead of concrete. I remember sitting on a wooden porch with my mother watching fireflies dance over the lake while crickets sang their evening songs. Everything felt different out there. The air smelled cleaner, the sky looked bigger, my chest felt lighter. One evening when I was 12 years old, I sat on the steps of that rented cabin and made a promise to myself. Someday, I told myself I would own a place like this, not rent it for a week, own it, forever. That promise stayed with me through everything that came after. I met Gary when I was 23. He was charming, funny, and full of big dreams. We got married a year later, and I thought we would build a life together. I mentioned my dream of a country house once early in our marriage. Gary laughed and said he could never live that far from the city. He needed to be close to his clients, close to the action, close to whatever shiny thing caught his attention next. So, I put my dream aside. I told myself there would be time later. We had 2 children. Priscilla came first, then Thomas 3 years later. I threw myself into being a mother. I worked as an accountant at a manufacturing company, putting in long hours to support our family. Gary worked in sales, which meant expensive suits, client dinners, and a lifestyle we could not actually afford. He bought a new car every 3 years. He joined a golf club with membership fees that made my stomach turn. He insisted on vacations to places that required plane tickets and resort reservations. Every time I tried to talk about budgeting, about saving for the future, he would wave his hand and tell me to stop worrying so much. I worried anyway. I worried in silence while I clipped coupons and packed lunches and wore the same work clothes year after year. I worried while I took on extra projects at work to cover the credit card bills he kept racking up. When Priscilla was 19 and Thomas was 16, Gary announced he was leaving. He had met someone else, someone who appreciated him, he said, someone who did not nag him about money all the time. He walked out the door and left me with a mountain of debt I had not even known existed. Credit cards maxed out, a second mortgage on our house that he had taken without telling me, loans from places I had never heard of. I sat at my kitchen table that night staring at papers that added up to over $80,000 of debt, and I cried until I had no tears left. Then I dried my eyes and made a plan. It took me 7 years to pay off every cent. 7 years of working overtime. 7 years of saying no to everything that was not absolutely essential. 7 years of watching every penny while still trying to give my kids the life they deserved. I paid for Priscilla's college. I helped Thomas through veterinary school. I never complained, never made them feel like burdens. They were my children, and providing for them was my responsibility. But through all of it, I never forgot my promise to that 12-year-old girl sitting on cabin steps. I just pushed it further and further into the future. After the debt was gone, I started saving, really saving. I brought lunch to work every single day for 15 years. I drove the same car until it had over 200,000 miles on it. I did not buy new clothes unless something literally fell apart. I did not take vacations. I did not eat at restaurants. Every month, I transferred money into a separate account. My country house fund. Some months, it was only $50. Some months, it was $500. But I never missed a month, not once in 15 years. 3 months ago, I finally retired. I was 59 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I did not have to answer to anyone but myself. I sold my small condo in the city, added the proceeds to my savings, and started looking for my dream. I found it on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. A colonial farmhouse built in 1874. 4 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch that looked out over a small private lake. There was an apple orchard behind the house with trees that had been producing fruit for over a century. The realtor warned me that the house needed work. The kitchen was outdated. Some of the windows needed replacing. The furnace was old. I did not care. I walked through those rooms and I saw everything I had ever wanted. I saw mornings with coffee on the porch. I saw afternoons reading by the fireplace. I saw a garden I would plant with my own hands. I saw peace. The asking price was at the very top of my budget. I did not negotiate. I did not hesitate. I made a full price offer that same day. The closing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I barely slept the night before. When I signed my name on the final document and the keys were placed in my hand, I cried for the second time in my adult life. But these were different tears. These were tears of joy. I drove straight to my new house, my house. I walked through every room, touching the walls, looking out every window. I did not have any furniture yet. I did not have dishes or towels or even a bed. I had a folding chair, a small suitcase, and the biggest smile of my life. I stood in the empty living room at 4 in the afternoon, planning where everything would go. The couch here, a bookshelf there, maybe a piano by the window, something I had always wanted to learn. Then my phone rang. It was Priscilla. I answered with joy in my voice, ready to share my happiness with my daughter. I had no idea that happiness was about to be tested. My daughter's voice came through the phone, fast and excited words tumbling over each other like she could barely contain herself. "Mom," she said, "great news. I heard you closed on the house today. We are coming to celebrate with you." My heart warmed at her words. Priscilla wanted to see my new home. She wanted to share this moment with me. For a brief second, I felt like maybe I had been too hard on her in my mind, too quick to notice her flaws instead of her love. "That is so sweet, honey," I said. "When were you thinking of coming?" "In about an hour," she replied. "And Mom, Warren's whole family is coming too. 20 people total." I felt the words hit me before I fully understood them. 20 people. 1 hour. "You need to get the rooms ready and cook dinner for everyone," Priscilla continued. "We are staying 2 weeks. It is going to be like a family reunion. The kids are so excited to see the country. Warren's parents have been dying for a vacation." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I looked around at the empty house. No furniture, no beds, no food, no dishes to serve food on, even if I had any. "But Priscilla, I finally managed. The house is empty. I do not even have furniture yet. I just signed the papers this morning." "Oh, you will figure it out," she said, her tone dismissive. "You always do. Warren's family is already loading into cars. See you soon, Mom. Love you." The phone went silent. I stood there, frozen. The phone still pressed against my ear, even though the call had ended. My mind raced through what she had just said. 20 people. No notice. 2 weeks. Cook dinner. Get rooms ready. In a house with nothing but a folding chair and my suitcase. I lowered myself onto that folding chair because my legs felt like they might give out. I tried to make sense of what had just happened. My daughter had essentially commandeered my home before I had spent a single night in it. She had invited 20 members of her husband's family without asking if it was okay. She expected me to feed and house them all for 2 weeks, and she had given me 1 hour to prepare. I thought back over my relationship with Priscilla, searching for signs I should have seen, warnings I should have heeded. When she was young, Priscilla had a way of asking for things that made it impossible to say no. She would tilt her head, look up at me with those big eyes, and I would melt. I wanted to give her everything I never had as a child. I wanted her to feel loved and secure and provided for. When she turned 16, she wanted a car. I could not afford one, but I sold my own vehicle and bought her a used sedan instead. I took the bus to work for 2 years until I could save enough for another car. When she graduated high school, she wanted a big party. I put it on a credit card I spent the next year paying off. When she got into a private university, I took out loans to cover what her scholarships did not. When she got married to Warren, she wanted a wedding that cost more than most people's down payment on a house. Warren's family was large and loud and expected everything to be top-notch. I paid for 70% of that wedding because Warren's parents claimed they were in a tight spot financially. Every time Priscilla asked, I said yes. Every single time. Her brother Thomas was different. He had seen how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed. He applied for scholarships and worked part-time jobs through veterinary school. He rarely asked me for anything, and when I offered help, he usually declined. He moved to Oregon after graduation, and though we talked regularly, there was a distance between us that I did not fully understand. Now, standing in my empty dream house, I was beginning to understand it. I thought about Warren's family. I had met them at the wedding and at holidays over the years. Warren was the youngest of 5 children. His parents, Donald and Betty, were the kind of people who expected to be catered to. At the wedding, Betty had complained about the flower arrangements. Donald had gotten drunk and given a toast that was mostly about himself. Warren's siblings and their spouses treated every family gathering like a competition to see who could do the least while expecting the most. At Christmas dinners at Priscilla's apartment, I noticed I was always the one helping in the kitchen, while Warren's sisters sat in the living room sipping wine and commenting on how nice it was to be served. I picked up my phone and called my oldest friend, Lorraine. We had been close since college, and she was the one person I could always count on for honesty. I told her what Priscilla had said. I described the empty house, the 1-hour notice, the 2-week stay, the 20 people expecting dinner. Lorraine was quiet for a moment. Then she exploded. Edwina, you have got to be kidding me. She expects you to host 20 people with 1-hour notice in an empty house. Who does that? I do not know what to do, I admitted. They are already on the way. You are supposed to say no, Lorraine said firmly. For once in your life, Edwina, say no to that girl. This is your house, your dream. You have waited 30 years for this. Do not let them take it from you on day 1. But she is my daughter, and you are her mother, not her servant. Honey, I love you, but you have got to stop letting Priscilla walk all over you. If you do not set boundaries now in your own home, when will you ever? I looked out the window at the lake sparkling in the late afternoon sun. Lorraine was right. I knew she was right. But I could also see cars in my mind already loading up heading my way. 20 people who expected dinner and beds and 2 weeks of vacation at my expense. I had about 50 minutes to decide who I was going to be in my new home. Against my better judgment, I got in my car and drove to the small grocery store in town. I told myself I would just buy a few things for a simple welcome. Cheese and crackers, some fruit, juice for the children. I would explain the situation calmly when they arrived, and surely they would understand that they could not stay in an empty house. The grocery store was charming, a family-owned place with creaky wooden floors and a bell that rang when you opened the door. Under different circumstances, I would have loved exploring it, chatting with the owner, discovering local products. Instead, I rushed through the aisles, grabbing whatever I could carry. I spent $43 on snacks that I hoped would serve as a peace offering while I explained why 20 people could not stay in a house with no beds. When I pulled back into my driveway, my stomach dropped. 5 vehicles were already parked on my property. SUVs and minivans crowded the gravel drive, some of them pulled onto the grass I had admired just hours before. I could see people moving around inside the house through the windows. The front door stood wide open. I had not given anyone a key. I had not even had time to change the locks. I walked toward the house with my grocery bags, and the noise hit me before I reached the porch. Children screaming, adults laughing, doors slamming somewhere upstairs. Inside, I found chaos. Warren's family had descended on my dream house like a swarm. Children ran through the rooms, their sneakers squeaking on the hardwood floors I had fallen in love with that morning. 2 boys were chasing each other up the staircase, and I watched one of them stumble and catch himself on the banister. I heard the old wood creak in protest. Donald Warren's father had somehow found my single folding chair and claimed it for himself. He sat in the middle of the living room like a king on a throne, looking around with an expression of vague disappointment. "This is it," he said to no one in particular. "I thought it would be bigger." Betty stood near the fireplace, running her finger along the mantel and examining it for dust. "Nice bones," she announced, "but it needs a lot of work. When are you planning to renovate Edwina?" I set down my grocery bags, still processing the scene in front of me. Priscilla appeared from the kitchen, her arms spread wide like she was the hostess of this gathering instead of me. "Mom," she exclaimed, "is this not amazing? Everyone was so excited to come." She hugged me and I stood stiff in her embrace. "Priscilla," I said carefully, "we need to talk about this. The house is empty. There are no beds, no furniture, no way to accommodate 20 people." Warren appeared behind his wife, tall, soft around the middle with the same entitled expression his father wore. "Come on, Mom," he said, and I flinched at him calling me that. "We will figure it out. There's a Walmart about 30 minutes from here. We can get air mattresses and sleeping bags. It will be like camping." His sister Donna, a thin woman with sharp features and sharper opinions, looked up from her phone. "You do have running water at least, right? The kids need baths tonight." I felt like I was standing in the middle of a tornado watching my dream house get torn apart around me while everyone acted like this was perfectly normal. One of the children I did not know who's ran past me holding an apple with one bite taken out of it. I recognized it immediately. It was from my orchard. The apples I had been looking forward to picking carefully, maybe making into pies or cider. Another child pushed past, nearly knocking the grocery bags from my arms. "Grandma, is there any food?" he yelled, even though I was not his grandmother. "I am starving." Donald looked up from my folding chair. "Speaking of food, when is dinner?" "Betty and I skipped lunch because Priscilla said you would have everything ready." I looked at my daughter, the child I had sacrificed so much for, and waited for her to step in, to explain, to apologize. Instead, she just smiled at me. "I knew you would not mind, Mom. You love hosting." I made my way through the crowded rooms to find Priscilla alone in what would eventually be my study. I touched her arm and guided her out to the wraparound porch away from the noise. The sun was starting to set over the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. It should have been a perfect moment. Instead, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Priscilla," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, "this is impossible. I cannot host 20 people in an empty house with no notice." She rolled her eyes. "Mom, you are overreacting. Just buy some air mattresses. There is plenty of floor space. We can use sleeping bags. The kids will think it is an adventure." "That is not the point," I said. "You did not ask me. You told me. 1 hour before showing up with your husband's entire family." She crossed her arms, her expression shifting from dismissive to annoyed. "I knew you would say yes anyway." "You always do. Why make a big deal out of it now?" The words hit me like a slap. She was right. I always said yes. I had trained her to expect exactly this. Besides, she continued, "Warren's family loves the country. We were going to rent an Airbnb for our annual reunion, but this is so much better. It is free." Free. That word echoed in my mind. 30 years of saving. 30 years of sacrifice. And to my daughter, it was just a free Airbnb. I could not speak. I turned and walked back inside, where Warren's mother was loudly wondering if there was any wine in this place, and his father was demanding to know the Wi-Fi password. I did not have wine. I did not have Wi-Fi. I did not have anything except grocery bags full of snacks and a heart that felt like it was breaking. I set up the cheese and crackers on the kitchen counter, the only surface available, and watched Warren's family descend on them like they had not eaten in days. No one said thank you. And somewhere in the chaos, I heard Donald ask Priscilla when the real dinner would be ready. I do not fully remember the next few hours. They blur together in my memory like a bad dream, moments of chaos punctuated by demands that came at me from every direction. Priscilla announced that we were going to Walmart to get supplies. She said it like it was a fun adventure, a mother-daughter bonding experience. I did not have the energy to argue. The store was massive and brightly lit, the complete opposite of the cozy country life I had envisioned. Priscilla walked through the aisles with purpose, tossing items into the cart like she was shopping with someone else's money. Because she was. 6 air mattresses, pillows, blankets, sheets, towels, a set of pots and pans because how else would I cook for everyone? Dish soap and sponges, paper plates and plastic utensils because washing dishes for 20 people would be impossible. Trash bags, cleaning supplies, toilet paper in bulk. The cart filled up and then overflowed. We needed a second cart. By the time we reached the checkout, my stomach was churning. I watched the numbers climb on the register display, each item adding to a total that felt like blood draining from a wound. $786. Priscilla did not even glance at the total. She just looked at me with that same expectant expression she had worn since childhood. "You got this right, Mom." I handed over my credit card. The card I had kept for emergencies, only the one with a zero balance that I had maintained for years. On the drive back, Priscilla chatted about her plans for the 2 weeks. Boat trips on the lake, hiking in the nearby state park, a big barbecue for Warren's parents' anniversary, which apparently fell during their stay, daily excursions for the kids. She did not once ask about my plans, my dreams for the house, what I had imagined doing with my first weeks of retirement in my new home. When we returned, the house was even more chaotic than when we left. The children had discovered the orchard and had been picking apples, throwing the ones with worms, leaving half-eaten fruit scattered across the grass. One of the boys, maybe 8 or 9 years old, had found a stick and was using it to poke at something near the lake. His mother, Donna, sat on the porch steps, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware. Inside, Donald had somehow produced a bottle of whiskey from his luggage and was well into his third glass. Betty had taken it upon herself to inspect every room in the house and was now holding court in the kitchen, listing all the things that needed to be fixed or updated. "The floors are uneven in the upstairs hallway," she announced as I struggled through the door with Walmart bags. "That is a lawsuit waiting to happen." I spent the next hour inflating air mattresses with a pump that sounded like a dying animal. Warren did not help. He was too busy on a work call, he said, even though I could hear him laughing and the game he was watching on his phone. Priscilla did not help either. She was supervising, which seemed to mean telling me where to put things while she did nothing herself. By the time the sleeping arrangements were sorted, it was nearly 9 o'clock and I had not eaten anything all day. My back ached from bending over air mattresses. My feet throbbed from hours of standing. And then Priscilla appeared in the doorway of what was supposed to be my master bedroom, but was now occupied by Warren's parents. "Mom, everyone is hungry. What are we doing for dinner?" I stared at her. I had one small pot from my old apartment, which I had brought for my own simple meals. No stove in the house was even tested to see if it worked. No real food except the cheese and crackers that had been devoured hours ago. I drove back into town to the only pizza place that was still open. I ordered 5 large pizzas and paid another $62. When I returned, the pizza was grabbed from my hands before I even made it through the door. Paper plates were distributed, and Warren's family scattered throughout my house, eating pizza and dropping crumbs on my beautiful hardwood floors. No one offered me a slice. I found myself standing in my own kitchen, the kitchen I had dreamed about for decades, eating cold pizza crust over the sink like a servant in my own home. That night, I had nowhere to sleep. Every air mattress was taken. Every room was occupied. The couch I did not have did not exist. I found my folding chair, the same one Donald had abandoned when he claimed an air mattress, and I set it up in the corner of the kitchen. I wrapped myself in a thin blanket that had been left over from the Walmart trip, and I tried to sleep. I did not sleep. I listened instead. I listened to Warren's family snoring and talking and the children who refused to settle down. I listened to Donald get up 3 times to use the bathroom, each time bumping into furniture and cursing loudly. I listened to Betty complain that the air mattress was too firm and then too soft and then too firm again. At some point in the darkness, I heard a conversation from the living room, Donald and Betty speaking in voices they probably thought were quiet. "Nice place," Donald said. "Too bad she bought it. Could have been a good investment for us." Betty laughed softly. "Well, at least we got a free vacation for 2 weeks." "And you know Priscilla. She will make sure we can come back whenever we want." I lay there in my folding chair in my dream house, and I felt something inside me shift. When morning came, I had not slept at all, but I was wide awake. Every muscle in my body ached. My eyes burned, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Priscilla found me in the kitchen at 6 in the morning. She was still in her pajamas, hair messy, looking annoyed that I was already up. She handed me a piece of paper. "Here's what we need for today," she said. "Groceries for the next few days, supplies for the boat trip, and Warren's mom wants you to drive her to the pharmacy in town. She forgot her blood pressure medication." I took the paper. I looked at the list of demands written in my daughter's handwriting. "Oh, and the kids made kind of a mess in the backyard," Priscilla added. "Can you clean that up? Warren's dad wants to set up horseshoes this afternoon." I walked outside. The backyard, my beautiful backyard with its century-old apple trees, looked like a tornado had hit it. Branches broken, apples scattered and rotting on the ground. Garbage from the night before that someone had left on the porch and the wind had blown across the grass. And the young apple tree, the small one near the lake that I had noticed during my first visit and thought I would nurture and watch grow. It was snapped in half. I knelt beside that broken tree, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt tears on my cheeks. Not tears of sadness, tears of rage. I had spent 30 years saving for this, 30 years of sacrifice and hope and dreaming, and in less than 24 hours, my daughter and her husband's family had trampled all over it like it meant nothing. Because to them, it did mean nothing. I was just a resource to be used, a servant to cook and clean and pay for everything while they enjoyed their free vacation. I wiped my tears and stood up. I was done. I walked away from my house without telling anyone where I was going. I got in my car and drove until I found a quiet spot by the lake far enough away that I could not see my properties or the cars that had invaded it. I sat there for a long time watching the water and thinking. Then I called my brother Eugene. Eugene was 4 years younger than me, and we had not always been close. He had made different choices in life, becoming a carpenter instead of following the path my parents wanted. He lived in a small house about 20 miles from my new property, and he had spent his whole adult life in this region. When he answered, his voice was warm and surprised. Edwina, how is the new house? I have been meaning to come by. I told him everything, every detail of the past 20 hours. The phone call, the demands, the chaos, the broken tree, the conversation I had overheard. Eugene was quiet for a long moment. Sis, he finally said, you cannot let them do this to you. This is your dream. You have been talking about this house since we were kids. I know, I said, but I do not know what to do. They are already there. They have already taken over. Then take it back, Eugene said firmly. Tell me what you need. I know everyone around here. We will figure this out together. We talked for almost an hour. Eugene suggested I meet with his neighbor Martha, an older woman who had lived in the area her whole life. She had dealt with similar family issues, he said, and she might have advice. I drove to Martha's farmhouse, a beautiful property with a vegetable garden that stretched for acres and chickens pecking in the yard. She came out to meet me before I even reached the front door. Martha was 67 years old with silver hair pulled back in a braid and hands that showed decades of hard work. Her eyes were kind but sharp, the eyes of someone who had seen a lot and learned from all of it. I told her my story over cups of tea at her kitchen table. She listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her expression growing more serious as I described the demands and the destruction. When I finished, she set down her teacup and looked at me directly. Honey, she said, you are being taken advantage of, and your daughter knows exactly what she is doing. The words stung, but I could not deny them. I had to cut off my youngest son for 2 years before he learned respect, Martha continued. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I cried every night, but it was necessary. Sometimes love means saying no, especially when saying yes destroys you. I thought about that, about saying no. I had never really said no to Priscilla, not once in her entire life. What would I even say, I asked? They are already there. They have already unpacked. They are expecting 2 weeks of vacation. Martha smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. Then you give them a vacation they will never forget. We talked for another hour. Martha helped me think through options, logistics, consequences. She did not tell me what to do. She helped me figure out what I wanted to do. By the time I left her farmhouse, I had a plan. I drove back toward my property, but I did not go home. Instead, I stopped at a payphone outside the post office and made several calls. I called the electric company and told them to delay setting up service in my name until further notice. The previous owner's account had been closed, so the house would have no power once the temporary connection ran out. I called the water company with the same request. I called my lawyer in the city, an old friend who had helped me with the house purchase. I asked her to confirm something I already knew, but needed to hear out loud. My name was on the deed. Only my name. This house belonged to me and me alone. She confirmed it. I called Eugene back and asked him to come to the house the next morning, pretending to be a contractor who needed to inspect the property. He agreed immediately. Finally, I called my son Thomas in Oregon. We did not talk as often as I wished, and when I heard his voice, I felt a wave of regret for all the years I had put Priscilla's demands ahead of my relationship with him. I told him what was happening. Thomas listened in silence. Then he said something that cut straight to my heart. Mom, why are you letting this happen? I do not know, honey, I admitted. I guess I thought being a good mother meant never saying no. Being a good mother also means teaching your kids respect, Thomas said quietly. Priscilla never learned that because you never taught her. He offered to fly out and help, but I told him no. This was something I needed to do myself. Then do it, Mom, he said. I believe in you. I hung up the phone and sat in my car as the sun began to set. Inside my house, I could see lights in the windows, shadows moving around. Warren's family enjoying their free vacation in my dream home. One more night, I told myself. One more night in that folding chair. And then everything would change. I drove back to the house and walked in like nothing had happened. Priscilla asked where I'd been, and I told her I was exploring the area, getting to know my new community. She seemed satisfied with that answer. She did not notice anything different about me. That night, I made spaghetti for 20 people. I used the pots and pans I had been forced to buy, cooking in a kitchen that was supposed to be mine alone. Warren's family ate without thanking me, complained about the sauce being too bland, and left their dirty dishes on every available surface. I cleaned up alone while they watched a movie on someone's laptop in the living room. I returned to my folding chair in the kitchen corner. I did not sleep that night either, but this time it was not because I was upset. It was because I was planning. The fourth morning arrived cold and gray with clouds hanging low over the lake. I woke at 5 before anyone else stirred, and I moved quickly and quietly through the house. My suitcase was still packed with essentials. I had never fully unpacked something I now realized was a small blessing. I gathered a few additional items, things that were mine from before. A photo album, some jewelry that had been my mother's, important documents. I moved everything to my car in 2 trips, stepping carefully around sleeping bodies on air mattresses, holding my breath each time a floorboard creaked. At 6:15, Eugene's truck pulled into the driveway. He got out wearing work clothes and carrying a clipboard, looking every bit the professional contractor. I met him on the porch. "You ready for this?" he asked quietly. I have never been more ready for anything in my life. Eugene walked through the house with me, playing his role perfectly. He made notes on his clipboard, shook his head at various things, talked loudly about structural issues and permit requirements. Warren's father, Donald, woke up during this performance. "What is going on?" he demanded, still half asleep. "Building inspection," Eugene said crisply, "required by the county within 30 days of sale. I am afraid everyone is going to have to clear out while I work." "Safety regulations." Donald sputtered but had no response. He was not used to being told what to do. The commotion woke others. Priscilla appeared looking annoyed. "Mom, what is this about?" "Standard procedure," I said smoothly. "The inspector needs everyone out of the house for a few hours." "A few hours, but we have plans today." I shrugged. Nothing I can do about county regulations. Eugene went outside to his truck, ostensibly to get more equipment. I stayed inside helping to hurry people along with their morning routines. By 8 o'clock, Warren's family had dressed and eaten and piled into their vehicles. They were planning to drive into town for breakfast and then explore some hiking trails. They expected to return by afternoon. They would not find what they expected when they returned. The moment the last car disappeared down the road, I moved into action. Eugene helped me load the Walmart purchases into his truck. The air mattresses, the bedding, the kitchen supplies. All of it. I would return them for a refund later or donate them if the store would not take them back. I walked through the house one more time, making sure nothing of mine remained. Then I went to the basement and found the main water shutoff valve. I turned it firmly to the closed position. The electrical panel was in the utility room. I flipped the main breaker. Back outside, I locked every door and every window. This house had good old-fashioned locks that required keys, and I had the only set. Eugene looked at me with admiration in his eyes. "You are really doing this." "I am really doing this." I placed a note on the kitchen table where they would find it if they managed to get inside. I had written it the night before, choosing each word carefully. The note said, "This is my house. I bought it with my money after 30 years of saving. You were not invited. You did not ask permission. You treated me like a servant in my own dream home. The water and electricity are off. The doors are locked. Find somewhere else to stay. When you learn what respect means, we can talk. Until then, goodbye." I signed it simply with my name. Eugene drove away with the truck full of supplies. I got in my car and followed, leaving my dream house locked and empty behind me. We stopped at a gas station a few miles down the road. I filled up my tank and used the payphone to make one more call. Lorraine had booked me a room at a nice hotel about an hour away. I would stay there for a week, maybe more, while things settled. I drove slowly, watching the countryside pass by outside my windows. Fields and forests and farmhouses, the landscape I had dreamed about for so long. It was still beautiful. It would still be there when I was ready to return. My phone rang before I had driven 20 minutes. Priscilla. I did not answer. It rang again and again and again. I pulled over and counted the calls, 47 by noon. The voicemails piled up, each one a different flavor of the same entitled outrage. Mom, this is not funny. Come back right now. How could you do this to me? To Warren's family? The door is locked and there is no water. The kids need a bathroom. Where are you? Mom, please, we have nowhere to go. This is so selfish. I cannot believe you would do this. Warren's voice appeared in one message, cold and sarcastic. Mrs. Edwina, this is very immature. We are your family. I listened to all of them sitting in my car by the side of the road. Then I typed a single text message to Priscilla. The nearest motel is 15 miles east. They have vacancy. I turned off my phone. At the hotel, Lorraine was waiting for me. She had driven up from Rochester that morning, canceling her own plans to be there when I needed her. We sat in my hotel room and I told her everything. She held my hand while I cried. Not sad tears exactly. More like release. Years and years of pressure finally finding an outlet. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in days. I slept deeply and dreamlessly, and when I woke in the morning, I felt lighter than I had in years. Over the next few days, I heard through Eugene what had happened after I left. Warren's family had been furious. They had driven around looking for me. They had called the police, who informed them that a homeowner locking her own house was not a crime. They had split up among 2 motels in the area, paying for their own rooms for the first time. The free vacation had suddenly become very expensive. After 2 days, they cut their losses and went home. Donald and Betty were reportedly still complaining about me to anyone who would listen. Warren's siblings blamed Priscilla for the disaster, which apparently caused several arguments. And Priscilla herself. She had stopped calling after the first day. The silence was almost worse than the angry voicemails, but I knew it was necessary. Martha had been right. Sometimes love means saying no. A week after leaving my dream house, I returned. The leaves were changing color, oranges and reds, spreading across the hills around the lake. My house sat waiting for me, patient and quiet, exactly as I had left it. Eugene came over to help me assess any damage from the unwanted guest's brief stay. We found scuff marks on some floors, a few stains on walls that would need painting, some broken branches in the orchard. The young apple tree was beyond saving, but Eugene knew a nursery nearby that sold heritage varieties. We would plant a new one in its place. Martha came over that afternoon with a gift, a small potted apple tree barely 2 feet tall. For new beginnings, she said. We planted it together, Martha and Eugene and me, digging in the cold earth, patting the soil around the roots, watering it carefully. It would take years to grow. I would be here to watch every inch. That night, I sat on my wraparound porch for the first time since the day I bought the house. The air was cold, and I wrapped myself in a blanket from the local general store. The lake glittered under stars more numerous than I had ever seen from my city condo. I was alone and I was at peace. Over the following weeks, I slowly made the house my own. I bought furniture, choosing each piece carefully. A comfortable couch, a bed with a mattress that supported my aging back, a kitchen table where I would eat my meals while looking out at the lake. I met my other neighbors, quiet country people who valued privacy but were quick to help when needed. I found a church with a friendly congregation. I joined the local garden club. I called Thomas every Sunday, long conversations that helped rebuild a relationship I had neglected for too long. He promised to visit for Christmas, and for the first time in years, I believed he meant it. Priscilla remained silent. 3 weeks passed without a word from her. Then one evening, my phone rang, her name on the screen. I almost did not answer, but something told me I should. Mom. Her voice was small and certain. Can we talk in person? I thought about it for a moment. Then I gave her the name of a coffee shop in town. We would meet there on neutral ground, not in my home, she agreed. The coffee shop was warm and smelled like fresh bread. I arrived early, choosing a table by the window where I could watch the street. Priscilla came alone, which surprised me. No Warren, no children. She looked different somehow, smaller, less certain. She sat down across from me and did not speak for a long moment. I have been doing a lot of thinking, she finally said. Warren and I have been fighting. A lot. Since that day. I waited, letting her find her own words. His family blamed me for everything. They said I should have known you would react that way. They said I ruined their vacation. She laughed bitterly. Their free vacation that they never even thanked you for. I still did not speak. Priscilla looked down at her hands. I treated you like you did not matter, like your dreams did not matter, like you were just there to serve us. She looked up and I saw tears in her eyes. I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. The words hung in the air between us. I had waited so long to hear them, but now that they had arrived, I was not sure what to do with them. Why, I asked quietly. Why did you think it was okay to do that to me? Priscilla was silent for a long moment. Because you never said no. I thought you wanted to do everything for me. I thought that was just how you showed love. And there it was. The truth I had been avoiding for years. I reached across the table and took my daughter's hand. Priscilla, I love you more than anything. But love does not mean no boundaries. It does not mean letting someone use you until there is nothing left. I failed you by never teaching you that. I told her about the 30 years of saving, the lunches packed every day, the clothes I did not buy, the vacations I never took, the dreams I put on hold again and again. I told her about the night in the folding chair listening to her father-in-law talk about my house as a missed investment opportunity. I told her about the broken apple tree, the one thing in that beautiful orchard that could not be saved. She cried through all of it. Real tears, not the manipulative tears I had seen from her before. I did not think about it that way, she said. I never thought about what you gave up. I just thought it was what mothers did. Some mothers, I said. But even mothers have limits. Even mothers have dreams. Even mothers deserve respect. We talked for 3 hours longer than we had talked in years. Not everything was resolved. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But it was a beginning. 6 months later, I can tell you that my relationship with my daughter is slowly healing. She visits me now, but she asks first. She comes alone or with just her children, not with Warren's entire extended family. She helps with dishes without being asked. She thanks me for meals. Warren and his family keep their distance. I am not sorry about that. My son Thomas visited for Christmas just as he promised. He stayed for a week and we took long walks around the lake talking about everything and nothing. Before he left, he told me he was proud of me. That meant more than I can express. Martha has become one of my closest friends. We have tea together every week and she is teaching me to garden. My vegetables are mediocre so far, but improving. Eugene drops by often to help with repairs and projects. Last month, he built me a beautiful wooden bench that sits by the lake, positioned perfectly to watch the sunrise. And my little apple tree, the one Martha gave me, is showing its first buds of spring. It will be years before it bears fruit. But I have years now, years of peace and quiet and mornings on my porch and evenings by my fireplace. I spent 59 years learning how to say yes. It took one moment of courage to learn how to say no. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you are the one always giving and never receiving, always saying yes and never being asked, I want you to know something. Your dreams matter. Your peace matters. Your boundaries are not selfishness. They are survival. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop letting them take you for granted. Before I go, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did you find the courage to say no? Share your story in the comments below because I know I am not the only one who has faced something like this, and sometimes it helps just to know we are not alone. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories who might need to hear them. And if you are not subscribed yet, join our community by clicking that subscribe button so you never miss a new story. Please share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who in your life is struggling to find their voice, and your share might be exactly what they need. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I wish you the courage to protect your dreams, the strength to set your boundaries, and the peace that comes from knowing your worth. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next story.